Or here's our offer. Here it is. You take it or you leave it. And if you leave it, then you're getting dealt to Pittsburgh, and we're going to get whatever Pittsburgh has to offer. This, according to Ian Rappaport, that they've agreed in principle to a trade. And that's the part of it that makes me so interested is what is Pittsburgh offering that would be okay with the Niners? It has to involve a player. Who's that player? Like, who do the Niners want as you go through and they're not having joint practices with New Orleans because they have so many injured guys, and you start to look at the Niner roster and you think about where are they weak? And yes, we'd love to have Minkah Fitzpatrick, and we'd love to have TJ Watt, and you'd love to have Pickens. Great. Those guys are probably not on the table, but who would it be that Pittsburgh would be willing to give up?
It's a good question. Yeah, that is. I mean, if the trade ends up happening, that is the question. I am of the belief, Dibs, and you might agree that this trade isn't going to happen, and I think it's going to be because of what Brandon Aiyuk thinks. If you missed it, this all came from an Ian Rappaport tweet earlier this morning. On Twitter, Ian Rappaport wrote, quote, "The Steelers and 49ers have a deal on a potential trade, and Pittsburgh is in a good place on an Aiyuk contract. Sources say if SF gives the final sign-off, it's done. San Francisco has an offer out to Aiyuk on a long-term deal for him to stay. He hasn't accepted." I would just amend Ian Rappaport's tweet by adding one word there at the end. Instead of he hasn't accepted, I would say he hasn't accepted yet.
Right.
Because the offer is still on the table, according to Ian Rappaport, and that makes total sense. It makes absolutely no sense that the 49ers would be willing to trade Brandon Aiyuk. And Dibs, considering that, according to Ian Rappaport, who is very, very plugged in, the 49ers and Steelers have agreed in principle on a trade that would send Aiyuk to Pittsburgh. The Niners are comfortable, at least according to reports, with the potential return to San Francisco from Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh reportedly is in a good place on a contract extension with Aiyuk that he would seem to prefer to the contract extension on the table from the 49ers. So if all of those boxes are checked, Dibs, why aren't we talking today on this Tuesday, the 13th of August at 2:16 p.m. as if Aiyuk is a Steeler? If all those boxes are checked, it feels like it's only awaiting one thing, which is Brandon Aiyuk saying, yep, good to go, let's do it.
Yeah, and I wonder if it is the contract that he's potentially being offered, if it's not exactly what he wants, or if it's close and he has to figure out if that's really what he wants to do. And if you look at the arc of all this is, Aiyuk has requested to be traded. And all we've heard is, from TJ Hushmanzada, his personal coach, that BA just wants to be paid. He wants to be a Niner, but he wants to be paid. So which one does he want more? Does he want to be paid more, or does he want to be a Niner more? Well, we kind of found that out when New England was going to offer him a reported $32 million plus a year. That's him being paid, and he reportedly nixed that deal. So then you think, okay, he wants to be a Niner more than he wants to be paid. And here we go, a week later or a week and a half since that deal got nixed, and now we have this latest report. So what's the Pittsburgh money? Is the Pittsburgh money so much greater than $26 million that the Niners are reportedly offering? Is it 30? And so now he's debating it. It feels to me like it's probably like you were saying, maybe in the green room, where if Pittsburgh's offering $28 million a year, well, now you have to decide, like, is $2 million a year enough to where I want to leave the Niners, where I'm comfortable, where I've done well, we're going to be a Super Bowl contending team? Is $2 million a year enough to want to go to a new environment?
Yeah. So it's a good question. I think the general consensus is the Niners offer, which is still currently on the table, is around $28 million a year. The Steelers offer
$26 million.
Sorry, 26. That's what I meant. The Steelers is the one probably around 28. And then everybody else is higher than that, but those are teams that Aiyuk isn't interested in going to, or the Niners aren't able to get compensation back in return to their liking. So those deals are essentially off the table. All that's left is most likely the $28 million offer from the Steelers and the $26 million offer from the 49ers. Also important to note, these are just the per year AAV, the average annual value, which is a very, very minor part of these contract extensions. A big important number is the guarantee, and we do not know anything about that. But the AAV also matters, and generally speaking, players would like more on average than less. So it seems to make sense that Brandon Aiyuk would prefer the Pittsburgh Steelers contract. And when you compare that with the fact that everything we've heard is that Brandon Aiyuk would want to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, that he loves Mike Tomlin, that Mike Tomlin is his twin, and that he wants to be in Pittsburgh, you're kind of left confused. That was my first reaction to seeing Ian Rappaport's tweet this morning, was confusion. This makes no sense. The 49ers have all the leverage in this situation. They can approach Aiyuk and just say, I know you really want to be a Steeler, Brandon, but sorry, even if they were getting something in return that they valued, you could still just say, if you're the 49ers, sorry, Brandon, you're under contract with us. We're not trading you by any means necessary. Accept the 26 or play on the 5th-year option or sit out and don't get paid at all. It's up to you. The choice is yours. The fact that the Niners, Dibs, are willing to essentially hand the racket over to Brandon Aiyuk when the ball is on their side of the court, it means to me that the San Francisco 49ers are calling Brandon Aiyuk's bluff. For whatever reason, they feel confident that Aiyuk doesn't actually want to go to the Steelers, and they're saying, all right, Brandon, put your money where your mouth is. You want to be a Steeler? Just sign off, and we'll get this done right now. But nothing has happened yet. He's still a 49er.
It's only been 4 hours since that report, so, maybe if you're Brandon Aiyuk, you're trying to, weigh it all out, and what would it mean, and, how would you fit into that offense, and, do you really want to still be a 49er? That's the thing that I can't help but wonder about, because, if it's $26 million or $28 million, that doesn't feel like a lot, but maybe it comes down to just his own feeling about the ego of, making $26 million a year average annual value and where that would put you on the ranking list, as opposed to making $28 million with Pittsburgh. And that puts you a little bit higher up with Jalen Waddle and, short of Amon-Ra St. Brown, but you're at least in the top 7 at that point. And if you settle for 26, that puts you down maybe at the bottom of the top 10 and even further outside of that. And so perhaps the ego part of that is what's weighing into his decision.
It always was interesting to me, this whole conversation leading up to this moment, because we had, the Browns are interested, and the Patriots are interested, and the Steelers are interested, and Aiyuk is interested in the Commanders, but the Commanders are not really interested in Aiyuk. And for all of these teams, it kind of felt like the consensus just across the country, football fans' consensus was, well, of course you'd want to be a Steeler over everybody else. And yeah, I guess I get wanting to be a Steeler maybe over a Patriot. Like, Patriots are not in as good of a position as the Steelers. That's saying more about the Patriots than the Steelers. But during this whole saga, Dibs, when Pittsburgh was a legitimate option to acquire the talents of Brandon Aiyuk, the one question I kept asking myself over and over and over again was, what is so damn interesting about the Steelers? What is piquing Brandon Aiyuk's interest about the Pittsburgh Steelers? Is it just simply that he likes Mike Tomlin? Is that enough? Does Brandon Aiyuk, is he willing to potentially sacrifice being on a winning team? And I know they had a decent record last year, but it was ugly football all season long, and you hope that they have improved quarterback play this year. But shout out to the 925 on the Xfinity mobile text line. Hey, guys, he could be worried about the Steelers' QB play, which will affect his numbers. No doubt it will. Even in this offense with the Niners, where you have so many mouths to feed, I would imagine Aiyuk's going to put up better numbers here than he would with the Steelers, with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields throwing him the ball. What is so damn attractive about the Steelers that made them an attractive place for him to land in the first place? It didn't make any sense to me. And now with this report from Ian Rapoport today, it's all coming to light for me, Dibs. Aiyuk has no interest in being a Steeler. He's just trying to use them to get the Niners to offer them 28 instead of the 26 they're currently sitting on.
I don't buy that, because the Niners have not moved off the 26 in months. And, negotiations broke down back in May. And he reportedly, and this is nothing that I'm actually reporting on, but it seems like he went back and asked for more than what he initially was going to settle for based on the way that the market moved. And it feels like that the team and Aiyuk have been at odds ever since, because all those other contracts came in over the top, and then Aiyuk went to his agent and said, whoa, the market's changed. We want more. And the team was basically saying, no, we were here at 26 and we were close to an agreement at 26, and now you don't want to do 26? that's a deal breaker for us, or at least that's a deal staller. And so then he says, I want to be traded. And then here we go, all the way through all the rigmarole. And now we get to a point where I think that it could be a broken relationship to the point where he might take 28. And it's a long play. And you look at Russell Wilson, fine. He's probably going to be the starter in the beginning of the year, but Justin Fields might be the guy. And I think that the one piece of this that makes me think that this deal might actually get done is Mike Tomlin, because it seems like he has a better relationship with Mike Tomlin than he does with Kyle Shanahan. And this is me from the outside looking in. I have no knowledge about, Brandon and Kyle. We know that Kyle reportedly had him in his doghouse a couple of years ago, although Kyle has refuted that. There was no doghouse. And we do know that Brandon has said, hey, Mike, people say we look alike. And so they struck up a little bit of an online relationship. Exactly. So I look at that part of it and think that this may be more important to Brandon Aiyuk. You get a little bit more money. You go play for a coach who might be more of a personal mentor than Kyle Shanahan, and a chance to have a fresh start. I could see it happening.
Maybe. If that is what ends up happening, I think it's a major mistake by the 49ers. And I think, what you say is right. Like Aiyuk, let's pretend that my scenario ultimately plays out to be true. Aiyuk using the Steelers to try to get more money from the 49ers. Just because that was a tactic that Aiyuk's camp is potentially using doesn't mean that it's going to work. The Niners can see right through it, which I think they're doing by this report coming out. Makes it seem like they're saying, all right, Brandon, you really want to be a Steeler? Just give us the go-ahead and we'll get it done. This could be Aiyuk's last gasp effort to try to get a couple extra $1 million, because I think ultimately, deep down, you might be right. Maybe he does desperately want to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, but everything we've heard, it was TJ Houshmandzadeh on with you and Mark Willard last week. You guys point blank asked him, if the money's the same, where would he want to be? And Houshmandzadeh said, the Niners. No doubt. The Niners.
But the money's not the same. And that, I don't think that the money's the same. And it feels like that the Niners' offer has not changed over the course of the last 3 months, maybe even longer.
My only point is, it's not like he's so done with the Niners relationship that he'd be spurning them to go elsewhere for the same amount of money. There's at least, it's not as if his relationship with Kyle Shanahan is so broken beyond repair that he'd be willing to go anywhere at the first opportunity. Like there's still a good enough relationship. He would have done that to New England, right? Exactly.
He would have taken the 32.5 or whatever that number was. He would have just run away to go to New England. But I do think that there's something about Pittsburgh that is attractive to him. And, maybe it's Mike Tomlin and the team. There's something about Pittsburgh that makes this feel more real to me than just him trying a last-ditch effort for leverage.
We'll get into that coming up on the other side as we continue here on Willard and Dibs. It's Mark Randy in for Mark Willard alongside Dan Dibley here on 95.7 The Game. Willard will be back tomorrow, but until then, we've got you covered until 6 o'clock today here on 95.7 The Game. We're sponsored by Meineke Car Care Centers. I see the phone calls streaming in. Give us a call, 888-957-9570. More Willard and Dibs coming up next here on 95.7 The Game.
Brought to you by Meineke, your one-stop shop for total car care. With over 50 years of experience and financing options that let you fix now and pay over time, you can trust your keys with Meineke. Engines, brakes, tires, oil. Meineke, doing car